Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us from. This is Paul Digital, and today I have interesting information for you that you want to listen, because if you're into matters academics, I'm telling you this video is for you, because I am joined by Dr. Rath right here with me, who is ready to tell us more about an amazing school that he works with, and I'm telling you, you're gonna benefit from this. So Dr. Rath, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is Paul Digital.
Thank you.
Welcome. So please tell us about yourself. For someone who is seeing you for the first time, who is Dr. Rath and what do you do?
Right, so I'm Dr. David Rath. I'm Associate Head of School at Montverde Academy. We're located near Orlando, Florida, and we've been in existence since 1912. We have an academic program for students 3 years old all the way through high school. And we start boarding in grade 7 and go all the way through grade 12 with boarding. And the reason I'm here in Kenya is that for the past few years, we've had a great relationship with the soccer association here. Mm-hmm. And we've had many fine young men come through our soccer program. We have one of the most elite soccer programs in the United States. Clemson, for example, just won the national championship. And we had 3 young men on the team from Montverde Academy, mm-hmm. and one of them was the soccer player of the year in college soccer. Mm-hmm. And one of the students on the team, or 2 I think actually, are from Kenya. Mm-hmm. So that excitement around the sport of soccer here mm-hmm. also led me to believe that there might be other interests from families as well mm-hmm. who are interested in simply a boarding school education. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm here speaking with families about Montverde Academy and the opportunity we could present to families who are interested in sending their children to boarding school.
That's beautiful. How long has Montverde Academy how long has it been in existence?
So we've been around for a long time, since 1912, but really the school has changed significantly since 1999. Mm-hmm. In 1999, we only had about 100 students, and most of them boarding. We've always had an international component, even then, but now we have 1,400 students. And the really neat thing about us is that we have students from over 70 different countries from around the world. And that's what I do in my role as associate head. I also oversee the admissions program. So I travel internationally. I cover Asia, Africa, parts of Europe. And there are 3 or 4 of us in the office who do extensive travel, trying to find mission-appropriate students who would benefit from our education. Mm-hmm.
So maybe how many countries have you recruited so far? Because I believe it's your first time in Kenya, and I believe there's so many other talents in different nations, What other countries have you gone to?
So I've personally been in Africa. I've been to Nigeria, I've been to Ghana, I've been to Morocco, and now Kenya. This is my very first visit to Kenya, and so I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, and welcome. We say
you.
Karibu.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
our Swahili say. Oh, you know that? That's a beautiful one. All right. And I love the fact that you've talked about soccer. I mean, most people will always think of success as, in line with academics. But there are many students who are very good at, sports and all that. But they succeed outside here. They don't have to be very good at academics. What do you have to say about that? Because looking at your school, it's very, in terms of grades, it's on the top notch. What do you have to say about that?
Well, we offer a full set of programming, really. We're very much like a small college. So we're able to offer a big menu. I liken it to you going to a restaurant, like the Cheesecake Factory. I don't know if you have that in Kenya or not. Mm-hmm. But when you get to a restaurant that has a giant menu, and you turn the page, and you turn the page, and finally you see something you like. That's really what Montverde Academy is. Mm-hmm. Is we offer so many possibilities for students, whether they're talented musicians, they could be theater students, mm-hmm. they could be interested in STEM, robotics, EA Sports Gaming Academy. We're the only school in the United States allowed to use EA Sports' name. Mm-hmm. And then we have probably one of the most prestigious athletic programs overall in the United States. Mm-hmm. So we believe in a balance, especially between sport and academics. Mm-hmm. And then soccer specifically, the way our soccer program is set up, we have 150 boys in our soccer program. So they actually take 5 academic classes during the day, but they also play soccer during the day. So the day is really split in half between soccer training and academics. So I'm really here looking for students who are passionate about certain things. Many other smaller boarding schools have students who are generalists, where they like to try many, many different things. Montverde Academy is not quite like that. We offer opportunities for specific things for students who have a passion in that thing and really can focus on that thing.
Wow. So what's value is there for Kenya in this, the partnership you're looking for, going ahead and speaking to the parents? What value is there for Kenyans?
So I would say for people from Kenya, it would be really for those who are interested in sending their children to university in the United States. Because once they get to boarding school and that student then ends up receiving a high school diploma from the United States, it's a little easier to get into university with that high school diploma from an American school. So they do well, they distinguish themselves at Montverde Academy. It makes it easier for them to go on to a top-notch university and really gain attention because they have a Montverde Academy diploma, and then perhaps special opportunities and scholarship for them when they go to university.
Talking of university, how easy is it to transition to the university from your school, and approximately how many students have you taken to the university? Is it everyone, or how is it like?
So every year we graduate almost 230 students. And the whole point of boarding school in general, not just Montverde Academy, but boarding school in general, is to nurture a child to become independent. So that if you've gone to boarding school, by the time you graduate, you are most definitely independent. And it makes college a much easier transition. You already know how to do your own laundry. You already know how to manage your time. You have to take all the free time you have and know how to handle the free time. That, particularly when you go to college, if you don't know how to handle the free time, can be a problem. So you learn to schedule your activities, you learn to schedule your homework, how you do things. You learn to develop a routine. And that sort of thing really transitions nicely from boarding school to college. So that's the advantage. Going to boarding school in the United States, you're already ready for college.
So have you enrolled any students from Kenya?
Yes, we've had several students, probably for 5 or 6 years, and I think there's a chance you might be able to meet Coach Bob Ayugi later, who can talk about the relationship we've had with the soccer association here. But really, it's been soccer specific, and my hope is to expand upon that and to find students who might be passionate in music or robotics or STEM who also want that same opportunity to go to a boarding school in the United States than to go on to college in the United States.
All right. And for those specific students that you have enrolled already, for the soccer, purpose, where are they?
So we have students at Clemson, we have students at Penn State, we have students at Marshall. When Marshall won the championship several years ago, 3 Montverde Academy players were on that national championship team. The same with Clemson. At Penn State, it's one of the finest soccer programs in the country. We have a Kenyan on there right now. So we've been very successful on our college placement with Kenyan students.
All right. That's beautiful. And now for Kenya, is there any scholarships that you're looking forward to probably give as much as you're recruiting, more talents and more talents?
That's a wonderful question. So I have to be careful with the word scholarship because we're not allowed to give scholarships based on talent because that would be a recruiting violation in our Florida High School Athletic Association. So what we are allowed to give is need-based financial aid. So every parent who wants to send a child to us files for financial aid, and then their financial information goes to a third-party vendor, and then that company sends us a report on the family. And then we do our best to try to meet the family's need. It's not a loan. What it simply is a discount in tuition based on the family's financial situation. So we have plenty of talented students all across the board at Montverde Academy. And so that's why we don't give merit scholarships, is because we have everybody's talented in some way.
Correct.
But this way, everybody is the same. It's all based on financial need, and we try to help as many families as possible.
Yeah.
We give away almost $5 million US in financial aid every year. So it's significant. Wow. So we do try to help as many as we can.
Yeah, that's quite a significant amount. Are there students you have given full scholarship? Like, for example, if you find a brilliant child coming from a family that cannot afford even the least of a school fees, you could provide?
Yes, absolutely. We've given full financial aid, which is really the equivalent of almost $58,000. And when you add some other things to it, it's into the $60,000 range for someone who's immensely talented in something. So if we have a soccer student who is really gifted in soccer, we really hope the family has not much financial means, because then we can help them tremendously.
Correct.
But if they have a lot of financial means, we can only help them to a certain degree. So that's the way it works. We've given a full financial aid to a wonderful singer we had a couple of years ago from Barbados. Phenomenal, and she needed all the financial help that we could provide, and she had a full scholarship, full financial aid to come to us because she needed the help. But she was immensely talented. So if we find a student from Kenya who is wonderfully talented in something else besides soccer, and the family needs that financial support, we can do that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Not only are you going to bring top scholarship to us, but what else do you do that makes Montverde Academy say, I have to have that student?
I see. That makes a lot of sense. That's makes a lot of sense. In terms of the teachers, as much as you're recruiting the students and all that, I'm looking forward to recruit teachers as well. And what criteria do you use?
So we don't really recruit international teachers, but we require all of our teachers within 3 years of being at Montverde Academy to have a master's degree, or at least to show significant progress towards a master's degree by that 3rd year. We want subject area experts in their field to be able to teach the children, and we pride ourselves on that. About 75% of our teachers right now have master's degrees, and everybody knows when they're hired, if he or she doesn't have a master's degree, that they need to be working on it, or else they will no longer be employed by the school after that time.
Yeah.
It's very important.
All right. And are you looking forward to probably start recruiting international teachers? Because I believe the school is international. Probably a parent will ask, how about you recruit a teacher who my child will relate with?
Well, we have international teachers who are already at school, but they have resident status.
Okay.
So we have a vast diversity in our teaching staff already. But I couldn't recruit necessarily a teacher from Kenya without that resident status, because we would have to sponsor that teacher, and we don't sponsor employees like that.
Ah, awesome.
So, but if we had someone from Kenya who had resident status, we absolutely would hire that person if that person were qualified.
All right. And for students who just do sports only and they do not know, probably they are not good in academics at all. I remember you mentioned about being good in academics and, of course, something else. Probably they're not good in academics at all. What do you have for that child?
That's bad news. We would not accept that child. And we take academics very, very seriously. So if the student is really supremely talented in soccer, but on paper doesn't show the progress needed on the academic side, we will not accept the student. So they would have to find another boarding school that might be a little more lenient, but we have really high admission standards. They have to do the academic work. All of our soccer players from Kenya are pretty good students.
Someone wrote a book and talked about why A students work for C students and why B students work for the government. I'm sure you've read that book.
I have not read that book.
Well, that's the case. A students work for C students, B students work for the government. This is in regards to, what you've just mentioned. Of course, we respect that the school values academics and, another sport, for example, or another talent, music. But what's your comment about that?
So my feeling would be, and this is interesting, it's an interesting theory, because the same goes in the United States about those who donate to their alma mater. And you could probably look at CEOs of major companies and see if they were always A students. The answer would probably be no, because they have to work so much harder to get to the top. And those people who went to boarding school, who were hardworking C students and appreciated the opportunity they were given, do not take anything for granted.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that tend to give back the most money to boarding schools. It's a very true statement. So it's very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah.
The C students doesn't mean they're lazy. It could mean they're working to their ability and are always fighting to try to do better, and maybe work beyond their ability. So I do agree with the theory. I do agree with the theory. For A students, maybe they've always been A students and maybe it comes very easy to them and maybe they've never had to work very hard to get the A.
Yeah.
Whereas the C student knows they have to struggle and fight, and that could be the difference.
Yeah, so maybe at Montverde you might consider some C students.
We take C students all the time. That's not bad. And if a student is consistently C, it shows hard work. And I'll tell you a difference. If a student, let's say in the United States, because I don't require international students to take a standardized test, but in the United States, all the students who try to enter Montverde Academy do take a standardized test. If you have low grades, C's, D's, and high test scores, that means you're not working to your ability. So that's a red flag for me. But if you're a consistent C student, it shows that you're right where you should be and that you're working hard. I'll take the C student, I won't take the D or F student.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's quite something. And how can a parent and a teacher, parents and teachers work together to bring up an all-rounded child?
So I think the teachers do a great job of trying to find the best path forward for the student. And communication is the key to everything. So if a student is starting to struggle in a class or two, the administration very quickly will pick up on that because we run grades every 3 weeks or so. And if we see patterns, we'll see, let's say one student is struggling in multiple classes, immediately the teachers are brought together. Because one English teacher, for example, may not know how that particular student is doing in math or history or any of the other subjects. But when the administration recognizes that there's a pattern where a student is struggling, then all the teachers get together and try to find a path for success. And parents are brought into that conversation as well. So teamwork is very important. And at boarding school, parent involvement is really important. So we try to communicate and sometimes probably over-communicate to where parents get so many emails, they just like, oh, another email from Montverde Academy. And like, you try to sift through it all. But we would rather over-communicate than not send enough.
All right. So communication is key for
It's
you
the
guys.
key. It is
it's
the key.
keeping on an update to the
Absolutely.
parent on how the
Absolutely.
child is doing.
Right. And
That's beautiful.
the other piece is that we're an iPad school. So every student at Montverde Academy has an iPad, and most of the coursework is done on the iPad. And we have a software program called Canvas. And Canvas is used by many universities as well. So parents have access to Canvas, and they can see up to the second grades that their children have. And we know some parents are probably on there every 5 seconds to look to see if another grade has come through.
Wow.
And if there's a problem, a parent might call the student and say, what's going on? What happened with that test? And they're like, Mom, leave me alone. I've got it. And then the teachers and the parents would get involved and talk and that kind of thing. So we give complete access to the parents as well. So it's not like, parents, you give your child to us and don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We want parents involved. We want that partnership. You're not anything without a strong partnership.
Wow. And since you have a boarding school, on board, how do you, in case a child gets sick, how do you handle that? Do you have a nursing school? Do you have some mini hospital in school?
Well, so let's use COVID as an example, right? After the pandemic, and COVID is still going around right now, we actually have rooms set aside for isolation for students to be able to stay away from the population. Because if you think about boarding schools, if one student can get sick, it could go rapidly through the whole boarding school community.
Correct.
So we immediately try to isolate a student who develops symptoms of COVID or anything like that. Even a fever of any kind, we want to have the student away from the rest of the population so that it doesn't spread everywhere. We're very, very careful about that. But the nice thing about our school is we're located near Orlando, Florida. It's a major city in the United States. We're only about 25 minutes from downtown Orlando, and just about 15 minutes from campus we have Orlando Health Hospital, a fantastic hospital with great doctors, but we have 2 full-time nurses on staff, and we actually have a doctor's office that's walkable from our campus. So if a student is too sick to walk, we can drive the student to the doctor's office, but otherwise we have everything a child needs to recover. And we'll use sport as an example. If a student has a sport injury, Our trainers are so sophisticated and knowledgeable about what they do. Our lead trainer was trained at Orlando City Soccer, which is a major league soccer club. And so he was working with professional athletes. Any of those trainers that we hire, they can rehab a major injury. So if a soccer player has a knee injury, our trainers can rehab that right on campus because of all the advanced technology that we have.
Sometimes teenagers can be difficult in terms of probably sometimes they don't want to be in school, they just want to go home. Some of them will be sick, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah. How do you create an environment where students are happy to be in school?
That's a great question. We have multiple ways of doing this. So I think first and foremost, students tend to bond with certain people, certainly with their friends, but they also need to have relationships with adults on campus. So our dorm parents are very important for the students. Hopefully there's a special relationship formed with a dorm parent, or they might have a favorite teacher. But it's not unusual for any student, a day student or a boarder, to come into the infirmary in the morning and say, oh, I have a tummy ache, I don't feel like doing things today. And sometimes they just need a little, what we call TLC, tender loving care, where they're given a little, maybe a throat lozenge and given a little time just to be themselves, but have their own little space for quiet, and then eventually they can be coaxed if they don't have a fever, going right back to class. But probably after they've already missed the test, so they can take it the next day. But relationships again are very, very, very important. So bonding with friends and having that special teacher or special coach relationship, and I think that's what the adults in our community do. The reason you choose to be in education is for the students. And if you're in education and you're not for the students, you're in the wrong line of work. And so those people need to leave, right? So if you're there, you're committed 100% to the children. And that has to show every day. And they have to know it every day. It's very important from both sides. But I think our faculty and staff do a great job of nurturing. And that's pretty pivotal in a child's life. I can think back to my own times in boarding school and remember the coaches that I had. And I don't necessarily remember all the lessons that I learned in the classroom, but I remember the teachers, and I remembered how engaging they were, and I remembered how much they cared about me. Those things are really important, and they'll stay with you for the rest of your life. That's what boarding schools do.
I agree. I still remember one science teacher. Back
See?
in primary school,
See?
yeah. I do.
Hopefully good memories.
Both. More of both.
Good,
yeah,
okay.
let's say. I mean, that happens. It's life.
Yeah. But they want to push you too, right? They don't want to make life too easy, because that's not life.
Exactly.
So they're going to push you to be your best, and sometimes that means struggling.
Yeah, and sometimes you realize that after that's when you realize, it was meant for my good. But at that age, you're like, no.
That's right.
You are a dean in a very good school in the middle of Florida, and we are in the 21st century. Again, you're in a fast world. What would you say about education? Being the fact that, we have internet on board. In terms of quality of education, please comment on that.
Everything moves at warp speed. And really, ironically, the children are ahead of the adults with technology. So, just think back. You're too young to even remember this, probably, the VCR. The video recorder.
Well,
I had a video recorder and I could do it. My parents didn't know how to operate the VCR. They thought it was the craziest thing. But somehow I just flipped through the buttons and said, this is how you do it. And that's the way children are today.
Yeah.
The next greatest technological tool comes along, and children are already leaps and bounds ahead of the adults, and we have to learn it. And so learn the new tricks. The students don't. They can seamlessly go from one thing to the next to the next. But we have to provide all those opportunities for them. And, in many of our different programs, EA Sports, for example, the gaming even evolves over time, but it happens pretty quickly. And so the person who facilitates our EA Sports gaming has to stay on top of things. You have to be knowledgeable about everything. So it's good because the adults get pushed too. And so you don't want teachers to be stagnant. So we teach a growth mindset where we're going to challenge people to grow, and that's not just the students, that's the adults as well.
All right. And right now we have AI on board, and
Oh my gosh.
I mean, students are using iPads, to probably do their assignments. I mean, Canva has some bits of AI as well. It's everywhere. How do you ensure that these kids are growing and they're not probably using ChatGPT, for example, to just do their assignments?
I will give you an honest answer about that. I don't know. I don't know. And I just experimented last year in the summer with ChatGPT myself. And I created a letter to a parent. And I offered different scenarios for the letter. And immediately ChatGPT wrote this wonderful letter.
Everything.
And so I could see the strengths of AI, and I can see the dangers of AI.
Sure.
And teachers, for them, AI could probably do their lesson planning now, and AI can probably write their comments now. So teachers have to be careful that they're not relying on that too much. But to me, it's a scary time. For children, it's something that they're going to be ingrained with and grow up with, and probably not a problem. But for me, there are many pitfalls that could come from AI, but I don't know how you control it.
So maybe you need to think about that?
We've been thinking about it, and we can't come up with great answers yet, right?
Yeah.
And so we just have to be careful that the students aren't using it too much to get through the coursework.
All right. So I believe you guys are working on that, so the parents can be sure that students will still grow.
So next year when I come, you can ask the same question.
The same question?
And I'll have maybe an answer.
Let's see how well you answer that.
That's right.
All right, for someone who is like, oh, I like Montverde Academy already, how could they find you? And even before how they could find you, what are your intakes like? And how many intakes do you have in a year?
Well, we probably have, this year we're going to have close to 400 new intakes because we're adding sections to grades 3, 4, and 5. So that's automatically 60 more students. So you add that to the graduating class is about 220 every year. And then we'll have maybe an attrition of about 6 or 7%. So that, 100 sounds like a lot to lose, but when you're talking about 1,400, it's maybe really not that many. And so that's a lot of new students, though, to bring into a community every year and try to get them acclimated and get them to understand Montverde Academy. For a student from Kenya coming to Montverde, there are two things that I'm going to look at closely. We want all the grades from the last few years. So if you're coming, for instance, in grade 11, I would want to see grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, see the performance in those grades. But just as importantly, we're going to ask for recommendations. So I want a recommendation letter from the English teacher, from the math teacher, and then from an administrator. And those are all very important too, because the teachers are going to tell me about the student in class, and the administrator is going to tell me about the student as a person. And then I'm going to get a clear picture of the data that I have and try to make an informed opinion as to whether or not that student is going to succeed in our community. But the recommendation letters are really, really important. So that's pretty much the entrance requirements would be the grades and then the recommendation letters. If a student's first language is not English, so in the home, if they speak something other than English as a first language, they also have to do a Duolingo English score. I need to have that on file as well. But if a student is young enough and doesn't know English too well, we can still work with that child because we have full levels of English as a second language. We have many students from Africa coming where French is their first language. And so they come to us and then they have to be in English as a second language for a year. But after a year to a year and a half, they're completely fluent. So it's a very good program.
Wow, that's beautiful. So how does someone get to apply? Probably for someone you may not meet their parent, but they're like, I saw this video and would like to apply to Montverde Academy. How could they apply? So
you would go onto our website at montverde.org. It's montverde.org. And you go under the admissions tab and click on the application process and then click Inquire Today. And it creates an inquiry. We process the inquiry, and then a parent is set up with a portal, and then they can start working on the application. So An interview is not required for a student because we have so many applications every year. So you can imagine if we're going to bring in 400 new students, how many applications overall we would get.
Sure.
There might be 12 or 1,300 applications,
yeah.
and it's impossible to interview every child interested in coming.
Sure.
So it's difficult, but it's something we enjoy.
All right. So how could someone find Dr. Dave?
My email is David, David, .rath at Montverde, Montverde.org. Or maybe you can see me on the streets of Kenya and I'll say hello and we can talk.
All right, so when you see Dr. Dave here, make sure you say hi and tell him, hey, I saw you from a video from Pearl Digital, and yes, our video has come to an end, or rather our amazing interview. So if you want to join, the details are below your screen, so you'll be able to join that. And I'm telling you, it's a beautiful school, so you better join. Thank you very much for watching. I am your host, Wamboi Ngatia.